This is not the video I had next in line for upload, but sometimes a blight so great arises from the derelict mire of society that you can't look away from its mud-caked face, and you need to confront its ugliness head on, or let your frustration with its fundamental rot fester inside of your chest for all eternity, laying the foundations for an endless tumult that will leave you forever uneasy at your core. I'm talking about the Muppet ride at Disney World, which may very well be on its way out behind the barn to be summarily reimagined by Bob Iger. I don't need to tell you that Disney has not taken good care of the Muppet IP. Everyone and their mom has gone over at this point. Not my mom, though. She's sophisticated and doesn't like puppet shows. Regardless, it has long been established that Disney, upon receiving this IP after a long series of negotiations that Jim Henson passed away in the process of, didn't really know what to do with these little felt creatures. I will say that this is a struggle I have no sympathy for. You're Disney. You're literally Disney. What do I even say to you at this point? You own like 90% of the IP in the world. You've got nearly 30,000 acres of American theme park land. You make 10 figures in revenue every year, and lately you're brushing up against 11. You're brushing up against 11 and you're kissing it on the neck a little. You little freak. You little gross freak. And if you can't cash in on a beloved franchise that's had cultural icon status for nearly 50 years, that's no one's fault but your own, Michael. And go ahead, say you tried. Look me in the eyes and tell me you really touch and feely tried to make the Muppets a successful IP in the same way you've been blowing capitalist smoke up the butts of Marvel and Star Wars. You can say it, but I won't believe you, because I don't see a Muppet Land in Hollywood studios like you said you were gonna make. I don't see a Muppet Wars Muppet's Edge with multiple Muppet rides and Muppet popcorn and Muppet milk. What Muppet do you think they would milk to get that? I think Gonzo is the easy answer, but I gotta go with Sweetums. I think he's a mammal. As you can see, I'm a little frustrated that Muppet Vision 3D might be getting the axe. When you have the means and fortune to be able to go to Disney World, you need to use your time wisely to make sure you're making the most of it. For me, this means there are always some experiences that I absolutely have to do every time, because who knows when or if I'll ever experience it again. I always have to have a LeFou's brew in Fantasyland. I always have to see the Country Bears. Okay, maybe not anymore. I always have to ride Spaceship Earth. And I always have to see Muppet Vision 3D. I'm not kidding. I've had trips where I've skipped like Flight of Passage and Rock and Roller Coaster and Rise of the Resistance, but I refuse to take a single trip to the Orlando Mouse House without paying a visit to Kermit and Pals at the Muppet Vision Theater. I've literally gone on every single Disney trip I've ever taken, and granted that is a single-digit amount of trips, but it's enough to make it a tradition. I've been doing it since my very first trip in 2002. That's 22 years of visiting them Muppets, and I don't intend to stop anytime soon, Bob. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you all and say that nothing about this really surprises me. If anything, I'm a little surprised Muppet Vision has managed to survive this long without being reimagined by Disney execs. I can say a lot of things about how it deserves its place because of insert reason here. Maybe because of tradition's sake. Maybe because it was Jim Henson's last Muppet production, with him passing away before it could even finish filming. Maybe just because I like it. But I don't think any of those reasons will persuade Disney of anything once they decide to raze something beloved and cherished to the ground, or shave portions of it off more and more over time until it's the animatronic ship of Theseus and you don't even recognize it anymore. Oh my god, I'm thinking about what they did to the Country Bears again. Ultimately, it does me no good to stick sentimental value onto a theme park attraction made by one of the biggest, most heartless corporate beasts in the land of capital. But I did it anyway. And here I am, complaining on the internet. But like I said, the writing's been on the wall for a while now, and this shouldn't really shock anyone. Remember how I said I first saw Muppet Vision in 2002? That was 11 years after its debut in 1991. Back then, there was a huge mural of Miss Piggy and Kermit, a fountain outside with Miss Piggy dressed as the Statue of Liberty, as she is in the show, and a bunch of fun set pieces. The building had a fun custom sign outside and a big hot air balloon of Kermit that would loom over the park. This was all capped off by a wacky gift shop where you could get fun Muppet-themed souvenirs. I vividly remember them selling fake dog leashes that made it look like you were walking an invisible pooch. Now that is camp. Now let's compare that to my last visit in 2022. Mural, gone. Custom sign, gone. Fountain, still there, for now. Gift shop, still there, but mostly filled with bland, anonymous Disney souvenirs. They took a stab at revitalizing the Muppet Courtyard when they replaced Pizza Planet with Pizza Rizzo, the pizzeria owned by Rizzo the Rat, whoever that is. But I'm not counting this as any effort. If anything, to me, this is sabotage. Oh, you know what'll really shore up some excitement about the Muppets? Crappy Florida pizza and whatever this deep-sea organism happens to be.
Oh my god! What is that?
And this is essentially the path that Disney has been taking with the Muppets for decades now. Half-hearted attempts to breathe life into the franchise and then shrugging their shoulders when it doesn't bring them back to the height of popularity that they had in the 70s and 80s. The last 30 or so years of Muppetry have been dotted with these efforts. The 2015 Muppet Show that I watched every single week and will still defend, which was cancelled just as it was really getting its footing. The 2 Muppet shows on Disney Plus, which were poorly promoted and then cancelled. Pizza Rizzo and the Abominations Within. It's been happening for a long time. I'd say the most earnest try at revival was the 2011 movie The Muppets, which is so good that I have little baby cousins born in the 2020s who can sing songs from it, completely alienated from my biased influence, mind you. But the sequel didn't do so hot, so that's it, it's over! Fun fact, you could, for a short time, see a segment with Constantine in the Muppet Vision pre-show to promote Muppets Most Wanted. This was woven into the narrative of the pre-show itself, and only really appeared briefly. When Muppets Haunted Mansion dropped, they basically replaced the pre-show with a promotion for that for a little while. I never saw this one, and I'm glad I didn't, because to drive home my point that these guys aren't even really trying, this was mostly just an introductory spiel by Pepe followed by a trailer for the movie. Okay, cool, whatever. I find this personally insulting, because the Muppet Vision pre-show is Oscar-worthy. But I've done a lot of complaining. Let's talk about something nice. Remember how I said my last trip to Muppet Vision was in 2022? It was a crowded day at Hollywood Studios, really hot. It's said among Disney Parks fans that there isn't really a slow season at Disney World anymore, and I was there in the summer. Busy season any year. The last few times I'd went to Muppet Vision, it was pretty quiet. I could see why Disney had it in the crosshairs from a purely business standpoint, I guess. This time, though, the theater was packed. The show was over 31 years old by that point, and it had a full house. Adults, kids, families, everyone was there to see the Muppets. I had a few kids in front of me. Not little, but, kids. I was in my late 20s at the time. I'd seen the show several times over and knew every beat of it. These kids, however, were probably seeing it for the very first time. And man, they loved it. Every effect, every animatronic, every little bit of Muppet magic. The crowd was laughing, the jokes were hitting. You could hear the crowd murmuring as they directed their friends and family to look around the theater and see the odds and ends that make up the show. Like Bean the Bunny hiding in the balcony, or the Penguin Orchestra. And I was just sitting there thinking, yeah, this is why I love this show. There were rides over in Epcot that had been around for less than a decade that were already starting to look odd and old. Over 30 years later, though, this show was wowing the people around me. 30 years later, in a world where we can be wowed by smartphones and the internet and endless streams of entertainment, it was almost like seeing it for the first time all over again. And that's what I'm really sad about when it comes to Muppet Vision's inevitable end, whether it's this winter or 10 years from now. It's such an innovative, exciting little thing, a beautifully condensed bit of all the wit and creativity that Jim Henson and Richard Hunt and Frank Oz and the rest of the Muppet team just had in them. And it happens every 15 minutes for about 12 hours, almost every day. And I think it sucks that it's gonna stop one day. Nothing I can say will save this little ride, and maybe nothing should, because it's still technically a product at the end of the day. But I do know this. Disney can bulldoze it off the land and replace it with something else, and then replace that with something else, on in service of the bottom line forever. And though they can do that, they can't erase the good times that you and I and all the people in that theater with me had with Muppet Vision. I'm still pissed though, don't get it twisted.